Hi, I'm Mark Mazzaferro, and it's time for another episode of The Works. And with us, as always, is the star of The Works, Shawn Cunningham, our Public Works Director. Shawn, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Mark.
And I see you've brought a guest. Why don't you introduce your guest?
Well, I brought with me today Brian McLean. He's the Public Works Superintendent for the city of Vacaville. So Brian is basically in charge of our entire Public Works maintenance operation.
Brian should be familiar to Channel 26 viewers. He spent a lot of time doing work with City Coach. Still does, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm still managing the City Coach Transit program also.
Good deal, but we're not here to talk about City Coach, are we? We're here to talk about a topic that, I don't want to say it's controversial, but it raises certainly a lot of questions when we're doing it, and we haven't done it for a while, and we're going to start again, so let's answer the questions, hopefully, before they get asked, and of course, I'm talking about the hydrant flushing program, which sounds, like, wow, what a great topic, but it's actually kind of interesting, isn't it? So why don't you tell us what the program is, Shawn?
Sure, thank you, Mark. And I appreciate you actually inviting us to talk about it because hydrant flushing is controversial, especially with the last several years of drought that we've endured. So really, hydrant flushing, we call it hydrant flushing, but technically it's really a flushing of the water system, and we use the fire hydrants as a tool to accomplish that. It really, hydrant flushing or flushing of the water system accomplishes three major things. If you think of the vast array of piping that makes up our water system, and all of that water is sitting there, and it can be sitting there for periods of time. And number one, there's particulate, unwanted particulate that gets introduced inadvertently into the water system and is also just created through corrosion, which Brian's going to talk a little bit about later, and ends up in the system. So one of the things that we want to accomplish by flushing the system is flushing that particulate matter out of the system. The second thing is we have some areas of town that use more water than others, and so we have, especially if you think of along a dead-end water line and there may be 6 houses on the end of that line, they're not necessarily turning the water over in that pipe on a regular basis. So what we end up with is chlorine residuals that drop below the levels we like to see. So flushing the water brings new water into that pipe. And then finally, the back to the hydrant part, the other benefit of hydrant flushing is we operate every hydrant in the city through that process. So we identify defective hydrants or hydrants sometimes that have debris in the hydrant that is impeding the flow out of the hydrant port. So,
and of course, fire hydrants are used to put out fires. And
you like hydrants to work when you need them. That's
exactly.
Correct.
All right, now we stopped doing this for, I think we said 3 years. Is that how long the program's been
3 years we've had it suspended
and that was because of?
Yes, because of the drought and the public perception of flushing, literally millions of gallons of water through the course of the year of flushing down the drain, so to speak.
All right, so Brian, you've got some interesting props with us here today. Why don't you tell us what happens when we don't do a hydrant flushing program?
So when you don't hydrant flush, you get valves within the hydrant that become clogged with various debris and sediment that naturally occurs within the city's water system. It gets caught just like in your sink faucet and your kitchen faucet. You can get debris that gets in the valve and prevent the faucet from turning off. The same thing occurs in a hydrant valve. As we go in and turn the valve, to exercise the valve, that debris is what we want, is we want that debris to come out. When we don't do it, that debris swirls around the insides of those hydrants and it wears down the rings and the valve seats, so that eventually you end up having a hydrant valve that may not turn, or one that ends up leaking, which is another problem itself.
So show us what a new one looks like, or what one that's been regularly maintained.
This is what a new seat looks like for a hydrant valve, and it should be a clean rubber gasket, and you see it's smooth and without debris. So when you have a regular cycle of preventive maintenance on hydrants, You get an infrastructure, including the piping and the hydrants, that have a longer life, and therefore the city gets a longer return of investment from their infrastructure.
So this one here, that's obviously not in service anymore, and
Correct.
that's why it was taken out of service, I'm guessing.
Yes. So we start our hydrant flushing program in February of each year, and we exercise the Public Works maintenance crews. They'll go out and exercise over 5,000 of the hydrants across the city of Vacaville. Those hydrants are done on an annual basis, and that flushing, again, it's a pretty simple process. The crew comes up with a truck, hooks up a water hose to the hydrant, and it goes to a diffuser device on the back of the truck. We set up a couple barricades that instruct the public about what's going on and to drive safely. We open that valve on that hydrant, and out comes the water, and it diffuses and then runs down the storm drain. Now, there is some controversy about the water that's actually going down the drain, but there's another purpose in the hydrant flushing, not just to get the debris out of the system, but the crews are able to monitor the water as it heads down the storm drain and into the drainage inlet. And what we look for is if there are backups, if there is debris. Sometimes we have found broken up chairs and other debris that is lodged down into the storm system. And we want to identify that and clean that out before it becomes an issue and causes a flooding event during a major storm event. We'd rather have our crews out working in the city during that storm event and in other ways.
So the suggestion that maybe we should try to recapture this water that's coming out of the hydrant, that water actually does serve another purpose, and it's to make sure the storm drains are operating properly as well.
Right.
Good. All right, so is this the only choice we have? Are there any alternatives to doing hydrant flushing, or is that it?
Exercising the hydrants is the optimal way to get the best performance, the preventive maintenance performance, and the longest life out of the 220 miles of water distribution here in the city, and those hydrants and all the backflows and other water devices attached to that system.
Now, you said we have 5,000 hydrants?
We've got over 5,000 hydrants.
So how many are they doing a day, do you know? Or?
Through the course of the month and a half, 2 months, we exercise all of those hydrants on an annual basis.
So those guys are moving around town pretty quick then, huh? Or, I mean, it seems like a big number to do in a short time.
Several can be done during the day, and that's what we end up doing, is dedicating a group of individuals in the crew to do that job. It's incredibly important, as Shawn had mentioned. You want that hydrant to function.
Right.
You want it to function for a fire purpose, and again, the city wants to have those valves exercised so we maintain that water quality and keep those devices in good working order.
Right. Now, you mentioned water quality, and I know when there's a water break, either a main or another pipe that supplies water to homes, we'll shut off that area. But when we turn it back on, we have to flush that again, don't we? Because there's stuff has gotten in probably because of the break, right?
That's right. Anytime, that's a good point. The other time we flush, and we have not really suspended that, we can't during the 3-year period. But if there's a water main break, or if we have to go in and repair a water service, then what happens is we're digging a hole, we're repairing the pipe, debris gets into the pipe, and we have to flush that out. So before we put it back in service, we do flush it, we test the chlorine residual, make sure that we've got chlorine back in the pipe, and then
off we go back in service.
That's right.
All right, so how many, not to go too far off the subject, but I mentioned water main breaks and services. How many breaks do we have a year? A lot, a little? Is it about average for a city our size, or?
Several. I mean, more than you would think. I don't have a number. Brian may have a number. Interestingly enough, I mean, that when we go into drought conditions, and then from drought conditions to heavy rain conditions, we will tend to see more breaks, because especially in Vacaville with the clay soils, the ground's moving, the pipes move, and they break. So that's typically this time going through the drought, we've seen more. As we start to get more rain, we'll see drought. I don't have a number for how many a year, but more than you would think.
Yeah, and I hear about them occasionally. Your staff is really good about letting me know, and then I'll put it out on Facebook or whatever. And people are actually glad to hear this stuff. It's crazy, but certainly if you're in that neighborhood and we weren't able to get a hold of you to let you know that what had happened, and you come home and you don't know what happened, it's a great way to know why my faucet's got something funny coming out of it for a minute or whatever the case may be. So I guess another question, you talk about water quality. We didn't do any flushing for 3 years, at least not to this extent. Did we get many complaints about odor or taste, or was it pretty good?
Yeah, I think the water quality has been fairly high. Our utilities division does an excellent job ensuring that that water quality is meeting all the state standards. More so on the hydrant flushing side of it, we don't see a whole lot of discoloration or the odor, smell type issues. It's a matter of really cycling through and ensuring that those devices are in good working order.
The other thing to tag on to that answer, we did not get a lot of complaints. We don't get a lot of odor complaints, taste complaints, and like Brian said, a lot of that is because the quality of water that the utilities department's putting into the pipe is high quality, and we do monitor. We would flush areas on a case-by-case basis if we had chlorine residuals dropping below acceptable levels, even during the 3 years. But more so, what we're seeing is, like Brian showed you, not only the fire hydrants, but we've got everybody's meter that's going to their house. We've got air relief valves in our system that we maintain. We have pressure or backflow devices that we maintain to businesses. All of those things are in a similar condition. And when we don't flush in the main and we have debris in the main, it's more than just the fire hydrant that shows similar wear, premature wear. So that's more what we saw over the 3 years than complaints.
And then that affects the service that's delivered to the homes or the businesses or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely, because then we're having to shut down the main to be able to instead of repairing, in a lot of cases, we had to replace backflow devices because they were damaged.
So I'm going to guess that you're happy that the program has started again.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Let's change subjects a little bit. The water stuff is fascinating, but there's some other stuff going on too, Shawn. Basically, it's one of my favorite topics. Okay, not really, but the term base failure repair. It's one of those government terms that we throw around, and the average person is going to go, "What is that?" So, what is base failure
repair? It's right up there with hydrant flushing. What does that mean?
Or we're going to mitigate this situation of effluent and turbidity. There, I said it. Go ahead.
So base failure repair, essentially what it means, when you look at the streets that we drive on every day, there's the asphalt, and there's underneath the asphalt. And underneath the asphalt is the foundation of the street that really maintains its integrity, and we call that the base. Okay. And what happens when streets are not maintained regularly, i.e. slurry sealed or overlaid, and water intrusion gets down in through the asphalt into the rock base, it washes the fines out, and we tend to have failure, and we call that base failure. And over the years, the city of Vacaville, for a long time, we've had a slurry seal program where every street in Vacaville was slurry sealed every 5 years. Slurry seal is basically the same thing as painting your house. What the slurry seal does is it keeps the integrity of the surface, and it keeps the water out of the base. Right. We have not been able to, we didn't slurry seal a street from 2009 through 2013.
And that was because of?
Basically because of the budget, the budget crisis, the recession, whatever we're going to call it. That was suspended. What funds our slurry seal program is gas tax. Right. Gas tax didn't necessarily change during that period, but our general fund certainly did. And so gas tax on the maintenance side of the equation had to be shifted to other priorities with the downturn of the general fund available. So now we're at a situation where we're coming back. The last 2 years we were able to slurry seal, but slurry sealing over a failed base or roadway section would be akin to painting your house over the dry rot without fixing the dry rot. Right. It's basically throwing money away. So something that we have now also reinstituted, because we have the financing picture is looking better, is we're going in and doing a very aggressive base failure program. It's actually two-prong. Measure M was good to us and provided this year $1 million over and above what we would normally have had for base failure budgeted. And so we are preparing a project now to do $1 million worth of base failure in the north part of town on a series of streets that we could not. They were written off as far as slurry sealing because they are so badly failed that we're going to basically go in and reconstruct those streets. So again, Measure M was huge in that regard. Over and above that, Brian and his crews, through normal gas tax budgeting and general fund budgeting, are able to do base failure again on what we're primarily targeting are the arterials and the major collector streets throughout town. So that is also underway.
And that's why we brought it up, because this work's going to start soon, isn't it?
It actually has started. There was some
Excellent.
work there in front of the high school along Monte Vista. Public Works crews were in and did some extensive base failure there, and they're working in other parts of town as well.
Well, it's not like we didn't do any maintenance. I mean, I remember you coming to a council meeting and doing a presentation about, well, we can do this or we can do that, or we can do these like fill in the crack things where it's, and I think that's what the council ultimately decided to do, right? So there were parts of town where the streets had these like black stripes all over them, you know, and that was just us trying to hang on as long as we could to get through this tough, difficult financial time, right?
That was 2012 exactly. We had hit rock bottom really. And to a typical slurry seal project in an area is somewhere in the range of $2 million. To overlay a significant amount of street is in the $3 to $4 million range, and we were down to about $250,000 in the budget, and so. You're right, Mark. What I had proposed to the council at that time is we've got to do something to keep the water out of the streets, because that's what will destroy the street. And so we went throughout town and we did crack sealing. Basically, it's a rubberized asphalt emulsion, and we filled all the cracks, and it looked horrible, but it worked. I mean, it was a Band-Aid, and it extended the life of our streets, and that's all we could do at that time.
And I'm guessing some of those streets are rising on the list of streets to be repaired sooner rather than later.
Right. Well, a lot of those they were in 2013 and 14. They were slurry sealed.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll pick that up again next year. And then we don't have an overlay planned in the future. Really, that's more dependent on grant funding availability to get enough money generated to do an overlay. But.
So I know we did some slurry sealing down, I want to say not South Town, but kind of in that area of the city. I want to say last year. Was it last year? End of last year? Sometime, or maybe it was the beginning of this year. Is that ringing any bells, or am I?
That was last year.
It was last year. Yeah, right. yeah. So we are kind of seeing things improve, aren't we? And I know when I got here almost 10 years ago, our streets were rated as some of the highest, certainly in Solano County, maybe the whole Bay Area, who knows? Or for those who don't like the Bay Area, the Central Valley region, whatever we want to call ourselves. But our streets were super high quality. And that's not to say they aren't still pretty high up there, but they aren't as good as they used to be. And now we're going to be able to kind of at least try and get back to that level, correct?
Right, and you're right. Traditionally, Vacaville has been in the good to very good pavement management index is what we use to measure that. And we've been in that range traditionally, and like I say, it's because of a very aggressive street maintenance program that we have enjoyed. We're still in the good range. I mean, we haven't dropped down to fair, certainly not to poor, and it looks like with things going the way they're going now as far as budgeting, that we're going to be able to start raising that number again.
And I think it's one of those quality of life things that you almost take for granted. And it also impacts economic development as well. in terms of people just coming to the city and visiting. If I'm going to drive through town and get shook up to the point where the fillings are coming out of my head, I'm not going back to that town. There's certainly cities in Solano County that have that issue. Go to San Francisco. As great a town as everybody thinks San Francisco is, their streets are always rated as some of the worst certainly in California, maybe the whole country. So it's important just generally for the safety. There's all kinds of other factors that play into why you need to keep your streets as maintained as you possibly can, aren't there?
Absolutely. And that's, in fact, believe it or not, we receive claims. The city of Vacaville, we receive claims probably is a handful a year from people that hit a pothole or say that their car was damaged because of the condition of the street. So yeah, it absolutely can affect. It affects the budget in other ways.
Right, right. Lots of different impacts, and just makes your city look better too. If things are, have that funny, what did you call that? Crack ceiling stuff all over the place. Ooh, creepy, very Halloweeny. Anyway, anything else going on in Public Works we should talk about, Shawn, before we say goodbye?
I'm going to give Brian a shot to see tell about some good things going on in maintenance and.
Okay. So, yeah, we've got quite a few different projects moving on. Of course, we're coming out of the drought, so one of the big ones that the city is working on, Public Works is working on, is a central irrigation system. So we have an investment in a central irrigation system, and we have a technician right now who is going through that system to bring it back up online, as well as adding some additional weather station features that will be able to more closely monitor the micro weather climate across Vacaville and apply that additional water to those turf areas in the parks to start to recover back from the drought. So that's going on. Of course, as Shawn was saying, the base failure repair project is going to be happening fairly soon. We're looking forward to that. As you mentioned, the roadway is a very visible element of the infrastructure. And it really does impact economic development because you want those infrastructure elements in good repair. Right. Another big project that the city is working on, that Public Works is leading the way on. We're developing enhancement projects for various parks, lists of those enhancements that we can start to again come back and replace some of the trees and the shrubs and whatnot that have been impacted by the drought. So over the next couple months, we'll be implementing some crew work out there to bring those parks back up to that quality of life level that Vacaville is really looking for. So going to be busy out there. We're going to be starting that hydrant flushing in February, and we are looking forward to getting back to that too. So.
Excellent, good deal. So Public Works, as we've said many times, touches almost every aspect of life in our community, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for taking some time out of your day to get us up to date on what's going on, and thank you for watching this episode of The Works. We'll see you next time.